In this video, I'm going to show you how to make storage bins for inside your van to go between the bodywork and the ply lining. I'm doing it in a VW T5 long wheelbase, but if you don't have one of those vans, pay attention anyway because the principles are the same. The stuff that we make the storage bins out of is this, which is domestic ventilation ducting in the size of 204mm by 60mm. That has several uses and therefore it's made mass produced really cheap by lots of different suppliers. Quite simply what we do is we get some of this channel and we glue the end caps onto the end of it and we turn it vertical where you've got a long thin vertical space, and we use it on the horizontal where you've got a long wide space that doesn't have a lot of height. However, before we do anything with this duct, the first thing that you do, step one, is most definitely fit the ply lining panel first, because what you might find is that it doesn't fit straight away out of the packaging. Despite what the advertising says, I've found that quite often the panels don't fit my van at the first attempt. You do need to sometimes drill new holes in them or make new holes in the bodywork of your van for if you're using riv nuts, for example. So fit the ply lining first, be able to remove it and refit it, because you will be checking the work as you go by taking the panel on and off. You can buy this flat channel pretty much anywhere that sells building materials, the obvious place being Screwfix and Toolstation, where it is between £4.50 and £5 per metre. You also need the end caps. They are less easy to find, so I had to buy them online. Usually they start at less than £3 each. Shop around, prices vary. I used 2 metres of this flat channel. Beware, it's not only available in white. I only found out later on that it's also available in grey. My van is black, so if I had my time over again, I would use grey channel because it would suit the black of my van better. Colour you choose is up to you. The tools I used are all pretty simple tools that the home DIY person would have. Basically, it was a jigsaw, a drill bits for wood, rasps for wood, an electric sander with a pointy nose. The Dremel was absolutely vital for cutting the plastic, and you also need to raid your handy bits of wood pile, because I needed some that was 70mm wide to base the tall storage bin on, and you also need some that's roughly 700 or 800mm long by about 20mm wide, and you will use that to run between the body panels to just wedge the plastic in place whilst the glue is setting. Here we are with the section of flat channel, and you can see that I have cut this strip out of it. So there you can see the section there and see how much I've cut away. You can see at this far end here where it butts up against this part of the bodywork, I've managed to get a full complete end stop in there, whereas at this end the corner was being forced out and it was protruding, or it was interfering with where the plywood would be. So I've cut this off here, so that will get glued in like that. The channel's wanting to collapse in on itself, so to secure it in place, I'm going to put some silicone seal in behind here where the panel touches where the channel touches the bodywork, and that will and silicone seal, not glue, so that I can cut it away or use sealant remover if I have to remove this thing. Don't expect to. I've made up these little wedges so they'll sit in here whilst the whilst the silicone seal sets, and they'll hold it to there. Hopefully that will keep it with a nice rectangular section inside, but if not, I might make some permanent dividers that go in there. The only problem is that you can see here the edge of this. This is the insulation that I fitted a couple of years ago. It's pretty scruffy. Well, this is the piece of channel that I cut from there. So if I turn that the upside down and feed it along there, then you can see I can glue that in place, and that gives it a nice neat finish, and that'll be the storage bin in there. So I'll just stick some glue on the back of here, hold that up there, so that should look a lot nicer than having the insulation on show. The end at this end here, this is what I've created. So that's the bottom. It's going to have another end cap glued on, and you can see that I've cut this corner here to match the curve of the interior of the bodywork here. I used these small right angle end braces. A smarter thing to do, but I didn't have any, would be to use that long thin strip that you could go all the way, wrap it all the way around here and just bolt in from each end, and that would save you having these nuts protruding. But actually it turns out that there's not a clearance issue. You can also see in here I've raided the pile of useful bits of timber. This piece of timber here happens to be 70mm wide. I've cut a notch out because there's a captive nut here which a bolt will go through, so that will support the base of it. It doesn't support all of the base, but much, you know, more than 70% of the base is supported there, so that will be strong enough. This thin piece here, the purpose of this is just to add a spacer to bring the storage box forward, so that there isn't a massive gap between the box and the plywood. And that's it. Time to start gluing it together. Oh, this thing, by the way, the problem is that this is awkward to get in and out, so you end up having to squeeze the thing. It's a good job that I've cut this section because you squeeze it and you have to feed it in from one side and then back through. It's fiddly, but it's doable. Right, now I'm going to glue the whole thing together. Right, slight change of plan. I am no longer going to be using this box here, which I have tapered the back of. That's because I've since found out that it would fit in at the full height without actually having this in the this back section cut away. So here's another one. Bearing in mind that this channel stuff is £4.50 or £5 a metre, I've got plenty of it, so I can afford to scrap some and start again. If you're doing this on a T5 long wheelbase, if you're following this absolutely slavishly, then this height here is 280mm. So you could make this your longer one here. This could be 720, and that's 280, and that's your meter used up. So next step is going to be to install this into here. Like so. I will then drill through there into the wood that holds the wood in place. Once I've got it lined up, I will drill through from this direction into the wood and screw it in with another screw. The type of screw to use, where's that focus? The type of screw to use is, can't really tell, quality foam. These are what they call a flanged dome head, because it's smoothest on the fingers, so it won't do any damage. Can you see that? Will it ever focus? No. Flanged dome head, that's all you need to know. Now the other thing is, since this is the second go, what I can also tell you is that I'm going to end up having to drill down and put a screw in through the base into that piece of wood that's underneath there, and that will help to get this all lined up. See you later. So now that's the boxes securely in, the long, low, wide one is wedged in, and it's more held in by being squeezed in than anything else. So I have screwed the right hand end of it to the timber that's between that and the other bin. You can also see that I've made another insulation cover for the top of the taller bin. So the next job is to cut the holes in your sheet of plywood. Think about this before you start. You don't have Superman's X-ray vision. It would be very handy if we did. Now also think, what's next? You're probably going to carpet over the plywood. So therefore the idea is not to be able to see the PVC edges, and therefore you need to leave some of the ply overlapping from the PVC boxes so that you don't see the edge. However, on the other hand, you want to leave a decent sized hole in the plywood so that you can get your hand in, and also give you a decent angle of access for the big bulky stuff. Also remember though that if there's going to be a bed platform in place at the wheel arch height, that means that your access to the storage is going to be from the top, which is why you want the top edge of the plywood hole to be as high as possible. Now my own preference is to hide these earth bolts in this top left corner, so that has determined the height of the gap that I cut into my plywood. However, what you do is up to you. So how do you measure the wood to cut? Because you don't have Superman's X-ray vision, what I did was I first drew a centre line along these riv nut holes which are in my van, and then I drew the corresponding centre line along my ply panel because my ply panel came with a load of holes cut at that height. I then used a right angled T-square to draw lines to the centre of other bolt holes. So eventually what I had was matching lines on the bodywork, and the lines on the bodywork that I'd drawn with a Sharpie pen corresponded with lines that I've drawn on my ply panel. And from that I did my measuring. Now beware that these two spars of the bodywork are not at 90 degrees to the floor or the window, so make sure you allow for that when you design your cuts. Once you've marked out the holes that you want to cut, drill inside the corners, and you'll need a 10mm hole to get the jigsaw blade in. Then using your jigsaw cut out the squares and sand the edges to be as nice and neat as you possibly can. If you're lucky, you're going to have a CNC wood cutting machine, but I doubt the average bloke has got that in his garage. I still have this sanding of the edges job to do. I know that I still need to square mine off, but I still have electrics to run behind this panel, so the panel isn't finished. But pretty much once you've got your nice neat squared off holes cut into the panel, that's the job done. You then finish the ply panel how you like, with carpet or paint or varnish. Now for me, after doing this, my next job is going to be boxing in the wheel arches so that I can fit a bed platform at wheel arch height. What would I do differently? Well, the first thing I'd do is I'd make it from grey coloured channel. I've mentioned that before, so I won't go into detail about that. Another change would be to not cut the corner off this end of the horizontal channel. It turned out to not be necessary, and it's left a big gap between the channel and the plywood that I don't like. So instead, I'd fit a full-size end cap. Another thing I'd like to do is fit the top insulation cover, or make the top insulation cover longer. I'd extend it to the right as far into this cavity as I could possibly manage. I'd extend it to the left quite a bit further past these earth bolts. I'd be tempted to make it from a single length of PVC if I bought a 2 meter length of duct, though you could join two pieces together behind one of these sections of bodywork. The other thing I'd do is I'd make the end bin taller. And the reason for that is that you can see an insulation gap above the box, or between the box and the top section, the top cover, and there's a gap at the side walls at the top. So I know I said earlier in my subtitles to make it 300mm high. That height would actually vary depending on the height of the wooden block that you put in below it and the thickness of the insulation that's above and around it. Though to be really picky, an even better solution would be to make it even taller than 300mm but have high side walls, higher than the back, and this would cover up this gap that appears at the sides. Now, you only see the insulation gap when your head is on the floor, and that's not realistic, but you do see this side gap from above, so I don't like that. I don't dislike it so badly that I'll rip it out and replace it, but if I did do this job again, if I did it in someone else's van, I'd take measures to prevent that gap appearing. Finally, if this video has been of use to you, then hit subscribe. I don't fix vans for a living and I don't make YouTube videos for a living. I'm just a bloke that's had to fix his own vehicles and had to figure out how to solve the problems that they throw at me. But 9,000 people have viewed my video on how to remove the rear aircon and heating unit from a T5 van. So if a few hundred people end up subscribing to this video, then I will consider making a formal channel on YouTube, which for a bloke that grew up with ZX Spectrums, that would be quite a challenge.